Tom and Bob whooped and hollered as the drumbeat signaled the end credits of Sweet and Elite.
Aw, yeah!
Said Tom.
Rarity is so the best pony!
No way!
Bob replied.
Applejack is best pony. She'd never even think of selling out her friends like Rarity did.
But she didn't go through with it. Any pony cannot feel temptation, but to feel it and own up to your best friends anyway, that's real friendship.
Whatever, dude. Let's watch Last Roundup next.
I was thinking Suited for Success.
We just saw a Rarity app. I want AJ.
There's plenty of AJ in Suited for Success. It's a main 6 episode.
It's a Rarity episode,
Bob said, getting annoyed.
I think you just like her because the writers named her Rock after you. Anyway, put on Applebug season. We can try to see if it's really Derpy who's saying muffins.
Let's do Sisterhood of Social. That'll have enough for both of us.
Fine.
Tom rapid-fire clicked his mouse to cue up the episode the bronies had agreed upon. 10 minutes later, Bob was whooping it up again as Applejack and Applebloom trained for the social.
Man, ponies have the life. No humdrum school and annoying parents. They really like their families. I wish I could live in Ponyville.
I'd give anything to live in Ponyville,
said Tom. Just then, the picture on the screen went all wonky. Then, there was a sound like a thunderclap. And a 10-foot dimensional rift opened up in the room, blowing up the computer. Through the rift stepped Princess Celestia herself.
Your voices have carried across the gap between worlds. Would you two fine young lads really like to live in the town of Ponyville?
Both bronies had been knocked back, but quickly recovered.
For really real?
Said Bob.
Quite. We actually have 2 places where some broni would be welcome to stay. One can go to Sweet Apple Acres, and the other is requested for a Carousel Boutique.
The 2 boys turned to each other and held out their fists.
Epic Bro-hoof!
The princess smiled.
Quickly now, through the rift.
And as quickly as they could, Bob and Tom leaped through the hole. Rarity trotted up to an outside table at the local cafe, where Applejack was already seated.
Darling, so wonderful to see you again.
Darn tootin'! How's that Tom working out for you?
Oh, he's simply divine. And I see you've got Bob coming along quite nicely. How are you today, Bob?
Bob looked over at Applejack. The Earth Pony said,
Go on, you can answer her.
But he just looked down at his feet. Applejack took hold of a long leather lead in her mouth and gave a hard tug.
I do declare sometimes these human slaves ain't got no more brains than a bale of hay. Go on and speak, Bob.
Sorry, Mistress Applejack. I'm quite well, Miss Rarity.
Well, that's good, Bob. You know, AJ, sometimes there are advantages to being a unicorn. When Tom gets ornery, I can just use magic on him.
Rarity lifted a foreleg to show a 4-inch tall Tom hanging on for dear life.
Now, Tom, I'll restore you temporarily so you can go get Applejacks and my drinks. But put too much sugar in my tea again, and I'm putting you with opalescence when we get home.
A tiny voice that could barely be heard cried,
No, please, Miss Rarity. I'll be good.
Applejack and Rarity chuckled. The ponies of Ponyville really did have the life.
What is it, Pinky? There's a creepy, crunchy, screepy, squealy noise under the sink in my bathroom! Again?
Twilight rubbed the sleep out of her eyes and pushed the covers back.
It's not Gummy this time, is it? Helpers!
Pinky tilted her head forward and Gummy came into view, dangling from her cotton candy mane. Twilight pushed the covers back and hung her tasseled nightcap over the newel post.
Fine.
5 minutes later, the two mares made their way to Sugar Cube Corner, Twilight trudging along wearily, while Pinkie pronked excitedly by her side. When the pink pony opened the front door, Twilight covered a yawn before following her friend up the stairs.
Listen, Twilight! Do you hear it?
Twilight cocked her head. She didn't hear anything.
Maybe if you get closer?
Twilight nodded and stuck her muzzle right against the vanity, close enough to study the loops and whirls in the grain. Still nothing.
Pinkie, there's nothing in there. There is!
Pinkie insisted. She was hopping from hoof to hoof, her blue eyes locked on the door.
I'm not lying! I Pinkie promise! Cross my heart enough to fly!
Stick a cupcake in your eye, Twilight finished, sticking a hoof in her eye.
Ow! All right!
She grabbed the two little pull knobs in her aura and yanked the doors open, then shoved her head inside.
Is that
She started to think.
a guillotine?
She finished thinking as her head was neatly lopped off.
Best April Fool's prank ever! Damn it, Pinkie!
Twilight fumbled around with her hooves until she found her head and then stuck it back on her neck.
I never should have told you I became immortal when I ascended.
A report on friendship, and possibly why you are orange. My dear, dear friend, Princess Celestia. Today I learned that friendship is a little bird tweeting in a meadow on a giant tuba. Friendship is a wreath of pretty flowers that smells like monkey feet, if the monkeys have been wearing socks for 12 million years, which they have. Also, the true meaning of friendship is Argylpithecus Juitwinov. Don't try to pronounce it, you'll just strain yourself. See, that was an act of friendship. If I was still feeling hostile, perhaps if maybe you had turned me into stone and left me that way for 1,000 years or something, I might have told you to pronounce it. And then, if you did it 3 times, Argylpithecus Juitwinov would appear. And believe you me, you don't want that. Let's just say that when we were tiny little tots going to Chaos Daycare together, he always got the award for most seriously disruptive to a productive day. But I got the award for most cookies eaten in 5 minutes, which is actually a much better prize, as it consists of a peanut butter and cotton candy sandwich on rye covered in chocolate sauce. Delicious! Now, aren't you glad that I'm your friend? So I warned you before you did something you'd regret. Fluttershy tells me that friendship truly means... Oh, excuse me. I think I might have just started snoring. Now, I realize how unusual this is for me, because I'm incapable of needing sleep. But after 1,000 years on my feet being stuck singing the same Klingon opera, I find that I actually get tired now and again, particularly when people try to tell me about butter. Wait, no. I mean friendship. Ugh, come on. Isn't this one of the things you're not supposed to explain? You're just supposed to feel it? Do you make people fill out reports on the true meaning of the color orange? I think that would be a better use of my time. To wit, the true meaning of the color orange. Orange means many things. It means a color and also a fruit. Also, it doesn't rhyme with anything, except sporange, and you can't say that in polite company. Orange is also a positively hideous color on you. So, frankly, I am utterly bewildered as to why I thought it was a good idea to turn you that color. Why, it totally clashes with your cutie mark. and your rainbow mane, which is why the grape juice. But don't worry, I am sure it will all wash out with, some lemon juice, which I thoughtfully provided for you all over your bath chambers. Now, aren't you glad we're friends again? I am sure you're looking forward to humiliating me by using Fluttershy as your cat's paw to make me write you more of these reports in the future. And I admit, my little heart goes pitter-pat at the thought of the very, very interesting shades of table sauce I could turn your mane next week. Just to prove how much we are friends. Because friends don't turn each other into giant rocks anymore, right? Just like friends do not turn each other's castles upside down and then start shaking them for loose change. And that is why I would never do such a thing. Because we're pals now, right? Just like the old days. There, I am now done with my report on the color orange. And I promise you that the castle's entire population of foals are not singing the song that doesn't end because I mind-controlled them or warped them from their usual personalities. It, may possibly have something to do with bribery and, spells that turn spinach candy cane flavored for whichever lucky and long-winded foal manages to keep the song up the longest, but I wouldn't know anything about that because I've suffered terrible headaches ever since being a rock for 1,000 years. And now, any time I try to remember anything... Wait... Fluttershy asked me to pick up pears at the store for her. I remembered something! Aren't you happy that I'm overcoming this terrible disability that was inflicted on me by a friend who promises she will never ever do it again unless I'm bad? Which, honestly, isn't blackmail against the law? I'm ashamed of you, Celestia. One law for the common ponies and one law for the royalty. I see how it is. In conclusion, there is a serious lack of cayenne pepper on this book, and I am distressed at how badly Twilight's cooking is coming out. Because when you serve someone a book on friendship for dinner, you really need to spice it up with some cayenne. I think you should have words with your student. I suggest Eidolon, psychedelic, and, triskaidekaphobia, because those are much more interesting words than any of the ones in this book. She couldn't even be bothered with salt, let alone a nice sprinkling of chili cinnamon sugar. Sincerely, your dear friend who is not a rock anymore and is also not teleporting any of the bearers of the elements of harmony to the middle of the ocean without a life jacket, wings, or horns because that would just be mean. And mean people don't have any friends. And friends don't do things like make veiled threats to their friends about things like not writing moronic reports on friendship being tantamount to unreforming. Deforming? Wait, am I not allowed to deform anymore? Because being silly putty is one of my greatest pleasures in life. Surely you wouldn't deny me that. Which is why I am absolutely certain that you didn't really mean that a failure to send you a report on friendship would be proof that I didn't care about or understand friendship. And therefore I had to be pretending to be reformed, and all of this is simply the kind of crap that comes out of Twilight Sparkle's mouth when she's trying to get me to do something, because somehow she thinks it might work on me. But I certainly know better, because you only turn your friends into statues for singing badly, and not for failing to turn in their friendship reports on time. Former Grand High Poobah and now merely ordinary, though indeed exceptionally handsome citizen, Discord.
All right, Maggot.
bellowed Staff Sergeant Thunderous, once of the Equestrian Royal Guard.
Today's the day we teach you how to use the most deadly weapon in the palace arsenal. Do you know what that is, soldier?
With all due respect, sir, said Captain Shining Armour, currently of the Equestrian Royal Guard, and, in fact, the stallion in charge of the entire operation. You're not actually my drill instructor anymore. Plus, I outrank you. Shining Armour scratched his mane with one hoof and took a glance around at the rather unassuming and grimy Canterlock Dockyard bar he found himself in. I outrank you, 8 times. Thunderous threw back another mug of cider, his 11th of the evening, and wiped the foam off his whiskers with one powerfully muscled forearm.
You think I don't know that, you livy-livered pinsy? I know you're in charge of that sorry flank outfit you call the Modern Guard. Worthless.
Again, with all due respect, said Shining Armour with considerable patience. They're fine colts, sir. I would trust any of them with my life. Any one of them. Thunderous laughed, sharp and barking.
And do you think they'd actually be able to save your life if it came to that?
I do, said Shining Armour, nodding.
Peh, said Thunderous. They may prance a good prance, but when the chips are down, they're going to need firepower. More firepower than you've given them.
They're well trained with the spear, said Shining Armour, and with all major forms of dessert, up to and including blancmange. I don't think I need to tell you how difficult that is to master. Thunderous shook his shaggy-maned head and belched heroically into his 12th cider. Shining had not even seen him order it.
Useless, he said.
Okay, said Shining Armour, who remained remarkably game despite the rather unusual and off-putting circumstances. What exactly should I be teaching them to use? Thunderous ran a lazy eye over the crowd, vanished into it, and returned, a blousy-looking, purple-hued Pegasus mare in tow.
The wife,
he said, apparently an introduction. Good evening, Mrs. Thunderous, said Shining Armour with a polite little bow.
Please, call me Peachy,
she said. She shrugged, smiling.
Colourblind am.
Okay, said Shining. Peachy, Thunderous, charmed to meet you. Your husband was just about to tell me exactly what style of deadly force I should be training my recruits to use.
I did tell you,
shouted Thunderous, causing some of the other bar patrons to glance at him and edge away.
The wife?
Shining Armour blinked. When you said the wife, that was actually the answer to my question.
Of course, Dunderhead.
You want me to teach the colts under my command to attack the enemy using their spouses?
No better weapon in all of Equestria,
crowed Thunderous, pulling Peachy close as the mare adopted a winsome little "oh you" expression.
This is my wife,
the crazed ex-sergeant shouted.
There are many like her, but this one is mine.
Oh, Thundy,
said Peachy, rolling her eyes.
Such a flatterer.
My wife is my best friend,
continued Thunderous, his eyes going a little crazy.
She is my life. I must master her as I master my life. I eat with her. I sleep with her.
Well, I would hope so, said Shining Armour diplomatically. I mean, I don't think you have to master your wife as such, but the eating and sleeping thing—
Hush, maggot,
suggested Thunderous.
Don't you dare interrupt me in the middle of my wifleman's creed.
Sorry?
You had better be,
screeched Thunderous.
With disciplined use, the wife is the single most powerful weapon at pony disposal. A trained attacker comes at you armed with his wife, you better turn tail and run.
What if it's just his filly friend? Thunderous's voice got low and dangerous.
Then you marry that mare's son.
He nodded decisively,
thus disarming him.
It works for us,
said Peachy, snuggling her husband close.
25 years since he first stole me away from that low-life mugger I was with, and I haven't looked back.
Okay, said Shining Armor. How are these, hypothetical spouse-based attackers going to be coming at me? How exactly are they weaponizing their brides?
Simple, said Thunderous. They're going to lift them up and toss them at you.
Lift them?
Lift them!
Screamed Thunderous, directly into Shining Armor's face.
Mark my words, Colt. The day is going to come when you'll need to take your wife in the hooves, lift her bodily over your head, and chuck her at the enemy. And when that day comes, if you haven't trained, and trained hard, you are going to be an entire world of hurt. The final darkness will be falling, society will be collapsing to shards all around you, and you'll be lying there in the throes of painful lumbago, absolutely unable to finish the job.
The job of throwing my wife at the enemy.
Yes!
Shining Armor backed a step or two away. I'm not even married, sir, he said.
No excuses! Screamed Thunderous. Listen to me now, Armor. When that fateful day arrives, you will remember these words, and you will weep, Armor, weep that did you not heed them. Someday, the fate of all Equestria will hang on your ability to treat your wife like a massive projectile.
Sir, said Shining Armor, I think maybe you've had enough cider for the evening.
Oh, don't be like that, said Peachy. I thought he was crazy too. That is, until he used me to decisively end the Battle of Rushy Ford. Chucked me right at the Insurgent General, knocked him on the helmet, and clang!
She clopped her forehoofs together.
Rebellion quashed. Kind of fun, actually.
She shot Thunderous a sly little wink. There was a pause. There was no reason that this should be a moment on which the world turned, thought Shining Armor. A chance meeting with an old drill instructor, now obviously quite senile and totally bucking insane, a plan that made no sense whatsoever. A highly dubious version of history that did not gel at all well with the books of military tactics that Shining Armor had rather voraciously devoured at the Academy. But, nonetheless, the air seemed to thicken around him, as though destiny was pressing down on the three of them with an iron hoof. Shining Armor could not explain it, but the sense of inexplicable, inescapable gravity was clear. What he said here tonight, right now, had the power to shape the future of Equestria. All right, said Shining Armor, feeling destiny lock into place. Show me.
You,
said Thunderous, gathering his faithful wife up in his hooves and adopting a lifting stance,
will not regret this.
Many years later, as invading shadows clustered and gathered close around the coronation balcony of the Crystal Citadel, Prince Shining Armor's eyes tracked a falling star of bright teal across the poisoned ochre sky, a tiny streak that represented Equestria's final hope for salvation. If some pony could only fly up to it, catch it in their hooves, and snatch it away from the ravenous joys of the spirit of the ancient and deposed Unicorn King, then the Crystal Empire, and by proxy all of the world, would be preserved. But Cadence was too weak from exertion to execute a proper Pegasus takeoff, and even if his own horn had not been neutralized by dark crystal magic, the falling heart was well out of his telekinetic range. There was, indeed, only one plan left. He glanced at his beautiful young bride. She glanced back at him. They nodded to one another.
I hope you know what you're doing,
said Cadence, clambering up onto Shining Armor's back. Everything will be absolutely fine, my dearest, said Shining Armor, flexing his powerful deltoids and quadriceps. And you know why?
Why?
Shining Armor's face was a mask of beatific confidence. I trained at the hooves of a master.
It was a dark and stormy night. All throughout Ponyville, the Weather Pegasi were working their tails off to keep the rogue storm from tearing any more roofs off. But it was already a losing battle. The creek that ran through town was foaming at its banks, an angry undulating—
Rise and shine, Spike.
We need to get in town in plenty of time to start winter wrap-up.
Uncontrollable force of nature. Several strong earth ponies dressed in rain slickers were hefting sandbags up from the low spots. Big Mac watched in horror as the frothing current devoured a swath of the town park. A bench grimly held on briefly before it, too, was engulfed in the unstoppable tide.
I did let you sleep in. It's 4 a.m., and I'm already dressed in my scarf hat and boots.
He grunted and doubled down on his efforts, bucking bales with twice the ferocity he—
Fine. I'll just leave you wrapped up in the blanket. Up you go.
Damn it. Twice the ferocity of before. But it was all for naught.
Let's see. Checklist? Check. Checklist. Check again. Every pony's been assigned with alternates for sick ponies. Or malingerers.
Damn it, Twilight, stop talking. You're kind of ruining the mood.
I bet Thunderlane will come down with feather flu again.
I can hear you muttering, you know.
And his special sun pony. Ponies. How come he gets 2 sexy sun ponies and I don't get squat?
Did you say that out loud? Spike's on your back, you know. And green isn't your color. Get it? I made a joke there.
What's that, Spike? Did you say something?
So you can hear me. Well, hear this. Shut up! I'm trying to tell a story.
Must be hearing things. Good morning, Mayor. I have the assignments right here. Went over them with the team leaders last week, and we did a dry run 2 days ago. Yes, on the second scroll. Applejack said that might be a problem. Really? Only 15? I thought... no. We'll just reassign Caramel.
I can't hear what any pony else says. Ugh.
I guess we'll just wait for every pony to show up.
A moment of silence! All right. Where was I? All right, the park flooded, and despite their best efforts, the sandbags weren't enough. And then the whole town flooded, and the ponies were stuck on the second floors of their houses. And the first day it was really miserable, but then they kind of turned it into a party, and Pegasi ferried food and stuff from house to house, including one particular house where a certain seafoam green unicorn and an ivory earth pony mare were trapped together. Huddled together for warmth because it was really cold with all the water and kind of scary, so maybe they were huddled together in fright, but that's how love blossoms and—
That's dumb.
Well, you try riding a shit thick Miss Purple Smart. Didn't I hear you say earlier you couldn't get any? Yeah, that's right. You got nothing. You know what? I'm gonna make this into a cloppic just to spite you. Ah, right. That's how love blossoms, and soon the two of them were snogging, their lips locked like a pair of remoras who had accidentally found each other. It was really romantic, despite that awful simile. When they broke apart, Lyra turned to Bon Bon.
And then she said, I'd rather gnaw my own hoof off.
Damn it, Twilight. Way to ruin the mood.
Who's that over there? If the mayor moves a little, I can see. Yes.
Whoa, now I'm getting thoughts too? Twilight, you dirty little mare, what are you? That's what she means? I did not need to know that. I need some brain bleach. Stat! Oh, damn it, Twilight. Twilight, no, God. Oh, God, now I'm scarred for life. Why, oh, God. Why would you... Spike is still on your back, isn't he? Think of the children, Twilight. Think of the children.
Don't worry. He's a very heavy sleeper.
That doesn't make it better, Twilight. That doesn't make it better!
Big Mac's day had started like any other. He'd risen with the sun, had his oats and coffee alongside his sister, with minimal conversation, of course, because it was early and neither of them felt very chatty, and headed out the door to work the fields. There was a certain stability and rhythm to farm life that Macintosh felt he quite enjoyed. Unfortunately, this was farm life in Ponyville, so the stability and rhythm parts of the equation flew right out of the window. Just as he was getting ready to hook himself into the plough, a magical accident involving an ancient chalice, Lyra and Bon Bon's anniversary, and something the Cutie Mark Crusaders wouldn't end up actually doing until 10 years later, tore open a hole in space-time, throwing the stallion into another dimension. That was about the point Big Mac realized it would be one of those days. He sighed.
Yup.
Once everything stopped spinning, Big Mac pushed himself to his hooves. He wasn't quite sure what he was standing on, since it felt solid, but he couldn't see anything below his hooves. Whatever it was, a twisted chunk of the plough and a heap of dirt and grass also stood on it, no doubt having fallen through whatever that was with him. Macintosh looked up and couldn't deny that what he saw was impressive. Thousands upon thousands of coloured crystals floated in the what he was going to call air for the sake of his sanity, above him. Light from an unseen source reflected and refracted off of uncountable facets, showering Macintosh with a dazzling light show in every colour he had ever seen, and a few he hadn't.
Crystals.
Big Mac nodded.
Yup.
He blinked, then jumped with a start as he realized the first voice had not been his own. He turned to see a black mist slowly shape itself into the form of a unicorn with a curved red horn.
Crystals.
King Sombra eyed Big Mac curiously.
Slave.
Macintosh fiddled with his yoke.
Nope.
He shook his head. Oddly, or at least oddly considering what Mac had heard from his sister about the tyrant of the Crystal Empire, Sombra merely shrugged. He lit his horn, and a few small crystals floated down from above, orbiting the dark unicorn.
Crystal slaves.
He declared, a fierce grin on his face. Big Mac frowned. As one of the crystals floated past him, he took it in his hoof. Sombra's magic aura faded from it, the tyrant hardly noticing its loss as he made several other crystals march in formation before him. Macintosh let go of the crystal, and it rose up to join the dizzying display above them. A thoughtful look creased Mac's brows. After a long time, he finally spoke.
Nope.
Sombra's eyes darted up. A snarl formed on his lips.
Crystal slaves.
He bellowed. At once, a dozen sharp crystals, bathed in Sombra's aura, hovered threateningly in a ring around Macintosh.
Nope.
Mac repeated, this time with more conviction. He tapped one of the crystals, shaking it free of Sombra's grip. The crystal drifted lazily upwards to join the spinning crystalline galaxies. Sombra stared as the light glistened on the vertices of the free-floating mineral. He looked at the crystals held by his magic, then back up at the whirling facets of colour above. He blinked, slowly at first, then a few more times rapidly. With a grimace, he doused his horn. His crystal slaves all floated upwards to dance in the sky. A look of wonder crossed the tyrant's face. Hours later, after Twilight and the gang had finally managed to wrest control of the Song of Memory from the Dark Queen of Tears so that they could open a portal to the dimension Macintosh had been lost in, they found him sitting across from King Sombra, drawing things in the patch of dirt he'd brought with him.
So, what you're saying,
King Sombra said, staring wide-eyed at the dirt,
is if I have the courage to jump, the crystals will sparkle?
Yup.
Macintosh nodded his head.
Wow, that's deep.